Tonight, we are continuing our exploration of the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and how they help us achieve emotional sobriety. We are currently on step 5, and I like to first begin with the process that starts when we work step 1 and what leads us to step 5. So in step 1, we admit we're powerless, right? And that our lives have become unmanageable. And when we work these steps from this perspective of emotional sobriety, we're really looking at how our emotional dependency has created this unmanageability in our life. And it's very important that we become aware of the impact and the effect that our emotional dependence has had on us. You know, as I think all of us realize, is that until we have an awareness of what we're doing and how we do it, we're unable to make any changes. So in that first step, becoming aware of how this emotional dependence has created unmanageability in our life is very important, because once we face that, we realize the pernicious effects of that emotional dependency. It throws us into an existential crisis that we want our lives to be different. We don't want to continue to function in this way that's toxic to us and to those people that we love and care about, but we don't have any alternative developed yet. So that throws us into this existential crisis. And that crisis says, I'm unhappy with what I'm doing. I need to stop it. It's not good. It's destructive in my life, but I don't have any alternative. That existential crisis creates an existential anxiety. And that anxiety needs to be resolved if we're going to go on. We just cannot live with that. And so it sets us up, and that's the important thing to remember about the steps. Each step creates a certain kind of a charge, an energy that moves us, prepares us for what's going to happen in the second step. And to me, that's the brilliance of the steps, is how interconnected they are, how interdependent they are, because now I'm in this crisis that I need some resolution. And step 2 says there's hope. There's another way that we can live our lives. We don't have to be emotionally dependent. We don't have to have our self-esteem to be an other validated self-esteem the rest of our lives. So now we get hope. We get hope that there's a new way in our life. And once again, that hope builds up a charge, right? There's hope. There's a new possibility. But now I have to do something, right? If my hope is going to be realized, it cannot just sit in me passively. It has to manifest itself into some action. And so step 3 comes along and says, all right, you're going to make a commitment to a new way of life. You're going to make a commitment to now start to grow yourself, to mature yourself emotionally, so that you can learn how to stand on your own 2 feet, something that none of us really learned how to do, because nobody really knows how to do it. You know, I think that we're a ship of fools, as Jim Morrison said. And so now we make this commitment. We're making a commitment to a new way of life. Well, once again, that commitment's important, right? It's incredibly important. But now what needs to happen is that commitment has to be followed by some action. So step 4 is the first tangible evidence of our commitment. And what do we do in step 4? In step 4, you know, we make this searching and fearless moral inventory. We talked about that last time. We take a look at who we are. Specifically, in this kind of an inventory, we are looking at our emotional dependency and how it's impacted our lives. What has been the effects of that on ourselves and others? And then now we've sat and we've reflected, because that's part of what's happening in step 4, is we're developing this practice of self-examination. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to share what we've learned about ourselves with another person. So step 5 is that we admit it to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Well, I want to focus on the exact nature of our wrongs when I talk about it this week. And next week, we'll talk about picking that person and selecting what I called an enlightened witness last time. The exact nature of our wrongs. What do we mean by that? Well, when we focus on emotional dependency, what we're really looking at is the big lie. And here's the big lie that we have to see, because this is where, all of our problems begin. Is the big lie says that life has to be the way I think it's supposed to be for me to be okay. So my emotional well-being is dependent on circumstances around me. It's dependent on factors that exist outside of me. And so I am just in this passive role in my life. I'm not the determining force in my life. All of these other forces are. And my job is because I'm so influenced by everything that's going on around me, I'm going to have to find some way to control all those so that they happen in the way that I erroneous believe I need them to happen. So I become this control freak. And to pull off the control, I have to generate a set of unenforceable rules. Unenforceable rules about how life is supposed to be. Life is supposed to be like this. Unenforceable rules how I'm supposed to be. Unenforceable rules how you're supposed to be. And then I demand that life lives up to these specifications or demands, or claims is the way Bill calls them. Well, there's not many of us that when we've sat down and started to talk about step 5 with someone, that we looked at and shared with people the exact nature of our wrongs in terms of putting them in the context of looking at our emotional dependence. This becomes so incredibly important because as I share these things, and this is why I just can't do the 4th step without the 5th step, there is something important about me giving voice to the things I become aware of. And I want to focus on that a little bit. When I say these things out loud, they reverberate in a different way than when they're just a soliloquy in my head. When I say them out loud, I even can start to hear them differently than when I'm just saying them to myself. I also am now developing the ability to be vulnerable in a relationship and to really let someone see who I am and what's going on, and especially the things I don't want someone to see. You see, a big part of the game I played was to try to create this image that you saw, and I didn't want you to see behind it. It was the Wizard of Oz kind of stuff. I'll be behind that curtain my whole life, and I don't want you to see what's behind that curtain. That's why I felt this imposter syndrome. If you really knew who I was, you weren't going to love me. The only way you could love me is with the image that I was projecting. And here we get a chance to now challenge the second big lie, that who I am is not good enough, that who I am is not lovable, that who I am is not desirable, that I have to be someone other than I am to be okay. That's another exact nature of our wrongs. That's a way that I've wronged myself. These two beliefs really diminish me. They reduce me to being just a victim of my life, a victim of all of the circumstances of my life. They are incredibly disempowering. In fact, I would like you to think of these kinds of ideas as injunctions that make it impossible to be happy, make it impossible to be okay with yourself, make it impossible to find a way to be comfortable in your own skin. So as I start to share these, and for me, my first experience with that was sharing it with my sponsor, Thom. My God, I had anxiety going into that. I had never talked with someone about the things I was about to share with him. And there were many things that I didn't talk about that I even wrote about. And I was forever grateful when he turned to me and said, okay, now share with me all the things that you chose not to share with me. That was great. I was like, no, I don't want to do that. By the way, how did you know I was doing that? And he says, because that's what I did. It was the same thing that he did when he was sharing with his sponsor. Because I just wanted to put the stuff that I was somewhat comfortable with. And so that's the third thing, that we're challenging this idea that life is about being comfortable, that life is about feeling okay. It's nonsense. That's not what life is about. Yes, it's important to have comfort and to enjoy it when it is, but it's also so important to be able to embrace your discomfort, because it's only in those moments when I'm embracing my discomfort and pushing the envelope of what I'm comfortable with that I become more comfortable. You see, I did it the other way my whole life. I insisted on being comfortable, and that made me less and less comfortable because my world kept shrinking. And as soon as I was willing to go the other way, is be uncomfortable and push my boundaries, say the things I didn't dare say, talk about the things I didn't want to talk about, all of a sudden, the space for me to live in started to expand. There was more room for me in my life. And that is what's happening in step 5. We are finally claiming our existence. We are claiming our place in this world. We are creating room enough for us to live our lives and to let go of all of these nonsensical ideas we have of who we have to be and how things have to be okay. Now, we're not going to be able to purge all of those at this particular point in time, but the point is that we start to take a step along these lines, that we take a step towards challenging these incredibly limiting ideas we have of ourselves and of life. I don't know if I was born an alcoholic or not, but I got to tell you, living with the rules that I had in my head made it impossible to find a way to be okay in life. And when I drank or used, it was a solution to that real quickly. And that quick solution came with a high price. So that's my thought about this part of the step, is the exact nature of our wrongs is looking at these ideas we have that are so crippling to our maturity, to our development. Because the other thing it says, and this is the last thing I would say, the fourth lie is this idea that I am unable to cope with life on life's terms. You see, with that idea, then I have no faith in myself. With that idea, I am so dependent on you to be a certain way so I can be okay. So this step is the beginning of restoration of a true faith in ourselves, grounded in our ability to start to align ourselves with reality. And instead of demanding and having all these rules about how life is supposed to be, how reality is supposed to be, I now start to find myself aligning myself with reality rather than fighting it. Because I'll tell you, just like Byron Katie says, every time you fight reality, reality wins. What did John Mellencamp say? I fought the law and the law won, right? That was the deal, man. I fought the law and the law won. I fought reality and reality won. It's going to win every time. So those are my reflections on this part of step 5. We will continue with this next week in talking about the qualities of that enlightened witness. And it's so important to pick a certain kind of a person to do this with, because we want to ensure that this is a very, very corrective emotional experience, as we talked about. Because that's the other thing that's happening here, isn't it? I'm being open and honest with someone, and I'm having a very different experience than I could have imagined. So with that said, I will turn this over to Thom for 10 minutes and ask him to share whatever comes to his mind or heart. And then after Thom is done sharing, we'll open up the meeting for discussion.
Thanks, Alan. Tell me the 4 lies again. I've never heard that you go all the way to 4. So tell me, I want to write them down.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding you. No. You said the 4. Well, out of 157 people, we got to remember. But okay, the first big lie.
I was in a trance.
Okay. I got you.
3 of them.
Okay, what are they?
Okay, the first is life has to be the way I need it to be in order for me to be okay. The second one is who I am is not good enough.
Not good enough.
Or desirable. And the 4th one is I am unable to cope with life on life's terms. I did not get number 3, and that was my question.
I have number 3.
What is it?
Oh,
I have life. The challenge is that life is about being comfortable.
Yes.
Discomfort.
Comfort. That's right. That life is about being comfortable. God, I'm glad you guys remembered that.
Can you say that once more?
It's about being comfortable.
Oh, life is about being comfortable. Okay.
Yeah. Embrace our discomfort.
Yeah, and actually learning to have there's a level of strangely of comfort in being in the discomfort. It's like there's a normalcy to it, I think, that we get to in real life. It's like, like how's today go? Well, everything's not about happiness. That's one of the things I've got. That's why one of the things that you and I focus on in the podcast a lot, I think, to me, Alan, is that the wiser, to me, the wiser goal of the daily practice is integrity and self-respect. Whereas I think in my early days, it was about happy, and having and feeling comfortable and all this. Now I'm still a fan of happy. I like happy, and I like things to go my way. But it's like that whether they go my way or not is no longer a measure of how I'm doing. Does that make sense? It's like I think that's one of the things that comes with this. So. I love that you went to we're kind of a similar place I was going to go to, the exact nature of our wrongs. What I wrote as you were talking was unenforceable rules for ourselves, not just for others. And the self-deprecation, the self-hatred, the basically the tricks I would pull on myself all my life to never let myself off the hook, no matter what, it was somehow I was doing it wrong. And for me, acknowledging that to another human being, I mean, not that I was bad to myself or that I was mean to myself, but really the level and the depth of this hateful attitude I had toward myself. That was well, I mean, I think I knew I was going in the right direction when I began to talk about that with sponsor and in therapy, when I realized how embarrassed I was. That's kind of a measure to me whether I know nowadays if I'm going the right direction. Am I scared or am I embarrassed to say this? And if I am, it's sort of like must be the thing I need to say. And so plowing forward into that. I love you also talking about step 5 as a beginning. And, I've said before, I really enjoy your way of connecting charge to how the steps take us. I mean, in some ways I think of it as a flight of steps, but in this case, this time through, somehow it's like going inward all the way to the center of step 4 and 5. And then at step 5, the beginning is we begin to move back out into the world. And so one of the things I absolutely believe is that I've come to understand in my practice as a therapist and as a recovering person is that concepts do nothing for us. It doesn't matter how brilliant the concept is. A concept can't heal us. A concept can't change anything about us. Concepts are only as good as they only serve us when we can translate them into practice. And so to me, it's always about that daily practice. And this is one of those things when Alan, when you were talking about it, I thought back to, you know, I've been talking to you about the first book I wrote, and how very often I'm finding that there's wisdom in that book that I'm pretty sure I didn't understand at the time that I wrote it. You know, that it was a pretty channeled thing, but this one is and I'm paraphrasing myself here, but it's each day practice accepting exactly who you are. Each day practice accepting exactly who you are, and you will never stop changing. The idea is the power of just not only awareness, like Michael McGee was talking about, the power of awareness, but also acceptance. The idea is, and of course I love the little magic trick in words with the idea that accepting something actually brings us to change. You know, nothing stays the same, so we keep moving. So I love that idea that step 5 is part of, it is a beginning, and it's the beginning of a level of self-honesty that is unlike anything I had ever experienced before. And there's, I wrote a couple of little notes just because I was reading through the 12 and 12 again just before we started as kind of a refresher. If I can read my writing here. I love one of the things it says. It says, I can't remember the exact words, but he says, don't let anybody tell you that AA doesn't ever involve willpower, because step 5 may take all the willpower you have. And I love that. I love that message, because that's become such an important part of my inner strength, is the message that comes from inner tough love. You know, it's not like, oh, you are such a sweetheart, I love you so much. It's get off your ass and do this because it's important and you're important. It's like, it's not the implied you piece of shit. It's like, no, this needs to be done because this is what we're doing, and you are important, and this is important. And I can't find exactly what I was going to allude to, but I will. I love those lies. I'm still, and I think that third lie about that life is supposed to be comfortable does, in fact, it did for me, in fact, change, beginning with, and I don't know if it changed at my exact first time did step 5, but it changed with my increasing commitment to self-honesty, and the idea that I don't have to tell everybody everything, but there literally is nothing. There's nothing I have that I have to keep a secret from everyone at all. It's like, that's freedom to me. And I may share something different with my wife than I share with Alan, but it's like, but the truth is, there's nothing in me that I still can feel shame, and I can still feel embarrassment and all that stuff, but there's nothing in me because of the practice of this. It's not just because of the concept, but the practice of being this honest and self-honest with this that's the freedom. It's like, there's no shame big enough inside of me that could destroy me. And I used to live in a way that felt like I was always right on the edge of being destroyed by my shame.
That's great.
So I'll stop there.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you, Thom.